Having to interrupt, though, to take you live now to Paris. We're going to listen into the French president who's been hosting talks on Libya with the rival leaders there by his side.
Which has now been described by the public prosecutor as a terrorist attack. It's too early to express ourselves, but I would like to express the condolences and solidarity of the French people for the Belgian people. Today, we held an important conference, the result of long work, a long time of work, with President El Sarraj and all the stakeholders in the Libyan case. The representative of the United Nations has been working on this for months. In July 2017, in La Celle-Saint-Cloud near Paris, we held an initial meeting. President Sarraj was there with Marshal Haftar in the presence of Al-Salameh, who was beginning his UN mission. This allowed us to lay the foundations of an agreement. And then a lot of work was carried out in the field. In September, the representative El Salameh, after the summer of hard work with all the stakeholders, submitted his proposals and his roadmap, which was validated by the UN during the General Assembly. And a lot of work has been done in recent months. Today's meeting is of historic importance because it forms part of a process. It has been prepared for a long time by all the stakeholders, and because it has the support of the entire international community. We have all shared the same sense of responsibility, emergency and commitment for a swift political solution to the situation in Libya. It's the first time that in this form such a meeting has been held with all the Libyan leaders, a key stage in the reconciliation process in Libya. Mr. Sarraj, Mr. Aliga Saleh, President of the House of Representatives, Mr. Meshri, President of the Council of State, and Mr. Al-Haftar, the General Commander of the Libyan National Army, in the presence of several Libyan delegations representing different sections of Libyan society. It's the first time that in this form, all the leaders, some of whom do not recognize each other, came together, accepted to work together, and together, as you have seen, have approved a joint statement. It's a key stage which makes possible what will now occur. It's the first time that in their presence we have brought together all the members of the international community under the aegis of the United Nations who are involved in the Libya. They are neighboring countries, African countries, countries in the Near and Middle East, European countries, permanent members of the Security Councils of the United Nations. All the countries which, in some cases in recent years, have tried to manipulate the situation in Libya by playing off one party against another, by destabilizing the situation. They have now accepted to work together to show their agreement and to support this work led by the Libyans themselves to commit to a joint statement and roadmap. This is also the first time, and it's a great step forward. And I would like to pay tribute to the quality of the work done with all the participants and the very good relations we have developed in recent weeks in order to achieve this result. This work is indispensable for Libya to begin with. The Libyan people aspire to security, stability, to a better quality of life and to express their sovereignty. We owe this to the Libyan people. Sometimes we have tried to take over their sovereignty, to substitute ourselves for their sovereignty. In so doing, we recognize the importance of the Libyan people, the debt we have towards the Libyan people, and the work we owe them in order to achieve this result. This subject is also of importance for the entire region, and as shown by the mobilization of the Arab League and other countries. The situation in Libya today is that of security and stability, which goes beyond Libya and which affects most of the countries in the region, with serious consequences for the Sahel, for neighboring countries, and potentially destabilization in Africa and the Near and Middle East. So the commitment of everybody towards a sovereign solution, inclusive solution in Libya bears witness to the importance of this for the stability of the region. It affects us as well, because many European countries have been subjected to the consequences of the crisis in Libya. I'm thinking of Italy in recent years and months has had to face a very serious migration crisis, and we have had to work I would like to pay tribute to the commitment of Italy, but Italy has had to come to terms with the consequences of the crisis, and other European countries have joined us to show their commitment to find a joint solution. The discussions which have taken place this morning showed a will to commit ourselves to specific points. First of all, a consensus on the need to unify all the institutions, the internal institutions, to contribute to the assertion of the sovereignty of the Libyan state by putting an end to parallel organizations and to further integrate the system thanks to an electoral process. The decision which we came to this morning, we have decided to set ourselves a timetable and to adopt a procedure. By the 16th of September, an important date for the Libyan people, either there will have been a change of constitution, or on the basis of the existing constitution, to take the electoral law, to adopt the electoral law that will make it possible to organize elections. So a joint commitment has been made to take the measures that will allow the country to organize a satisfactory election process, or to adopt a new constitution, or on the basis of a new electoral law duly adopted. And the three leaders of Libya have agreed to this. And it's important because they will make it possible for the process to come to fruition. Until now, we have been blocked by their disagreements. The second point, on December the 10th, 2018, elections will be held, presidential and legislative parliamentary elections. So a commitment on the basis of this process to restore to the Libyan people its sovereignty and to allow the Libyan people to express themselves on that date. This is something unprecedented, which is on a par with the high expectations of the Libyan people. Representative Salamé has carried out several election polls which shows the will of the Libyan people to commit to this process, to express their point of view and to decide as quickly as possible. And this law, this bill, will be presented by Mr. Salamé in a few moments after after we've heard the statement that was read to us earlier. Before giving the floor to Mr. Salamé and President Sarraj, I would like to say here that the presence of 20 regional countries, in addition to the Libyans and the United Nations, bears witness to the unity of the international community and to the fact that we have a unique commitment which we will be working to make a success. We have all made a collective commitment to support the efforts to comply with collective agreements It's, in this regard, is an essential stage, and I would like to thank the remarkable work done for several months by Rassam Salamé, the Special Representative of the United Nations. I would like to thank President Sarraj also. From the very beginning, you took your responsibilities and you accepted this inclusive dialogue made possible, and you made it possible for this meeting to take place and the work that we have done today. Now, we have some clear, specific commitments, a timetable which has been officially approved by the stakeholders, supported by the international community. Now it's up to us to act with a single goal, the interests of the Libyan people. Thank you, and you now have the floor. Thank you, Mr. President. First of all, I would like to pay tribute to the constructive role played by France and President Macron's great interest in this. The presence of the political leaders here today is a positive step. Everybody has accepted in one way or another the idea of parliamentary and presidential elections on December the 10th. We have been proposing this for 1 year, and we're delighted that finally everybody has agreed on this, and we assert the need for a constitutional basis to organize elections and the need for everybody to work together to achieve success. The National Assembly and the Council of State will have to comply with their commitments and pass the electoral law necessary. At today's meeting, I called for a ceasefire everywhere in Libya. Enough blood has been shed, and we call on everybody to engage in a dialogue to stop the military escalation that endangers civilians. We hope to arrive at a solution that will open up safety corridors for the population. We have also declared our refusal of terrorism and violence. Any agreement between Libyan stakeholders cannot be successful if there is interference by other countries. We need firm measures against all those who wish to hinder the democratic process. So we call on everybody to comply with the agreement of today, to work together to succeed, and we hope to be able to decide on our own future and that of our people. I would like to add a point. Today, we insisted that there should be a constitutional framework in addition to an electoral law. We were wondering whether this constitution would be the result of a referendum on the bill submitted to the National Assembly or an amendment to the Constitution, or to take the chapter in the Constitution, in the draft Constitution. So there are different possible solutions which we will be studying, and we hope to before the 16th of September to agree on the process for the elections to be held on December the 10th. So there is an agreement to unify the institutions, to continue the Cairo dialogue, and the military institutions, the police forces, the law enforcement forces will also be unified under the authority of the civilian government, and that is the choice of the Libyan people. I would like to thank President Macron and the representative El Salami as well. We all hope that we will succeed in our efforts. Thank you, Mr. President. I will be brief. I would simply like to say that without the will, the obstination of Mr. President Macron, this meeting would probably have had very great difficulties in coming to fruition. When we know the difficulties which our Libyan friends have faced, the complexity and difficulties of the situation, you need great willpower in order to bring about a meeting of this kind. It's a historic meeting for several reasons. The first one is the most important one. Once again, we are not replacing the Libyan people. The Libyan people are coming to an agreement amongst themselves in our presence. This is of crucial importance, and it is up to the Libyan people themselves to decide, not for the world to dictate to the Libyans what to do. Today, Mr. President Macron has said that there has been mutual recognition, at least in one case. There was even knowledge, for the first time, mutual knowledge, the first meeting between the four Libyan leaders who met here for the first time. So we had to get out of legal niceties and focus on what we had to forget about who was legitimate or illegitimate, and to put at the heart of our discussions the interests of the Libyan people. It's when we put the Libyan people at the heart of our concerns instead of legal niceties, debates on legitimacy, questioning of who is legitimate and who is not legitimate. It's when we put the interests of the Libyan people before every other consideration that we have done something important. And this is what has happened today. Another reason why today's meeting is of historic importance is that the Libyans have suffered a lot, it must be said. And there has been a lot of initiatives have been taken by the outside world, more or less coordinated amongst themselves and with the UN Action Plan. What has made today's meeting so important is that regional organizations of great importance, the African Union, the European Union, and so on, but also heads of state of neighboring countries, heads of countries that are very interested in relations with Libya, have all said the same thing and made the same commitments, and above all have borne witness to the agreement between Libyans amongst themselves. And that's why I think that this is indeed a historic day for which, on behalf of the Secretary General of the UN, who unfortunately was unable to attend today's meeting, it is the day of the peacekeepers, the UN peacekeepers at the UN, and the Secretary General had promised to spend today with the UN forces who have been attacked in Mali. Otherwise, he would have loved to have been here today. He has asked me to convey his greetings to you all and his thanks. But beyond all this, it's an important day for Libya, and I am delighted to have been able to witness this event. Thank you, Mr. the Special Representative. Now we will take a few questions. Vincent Hugo of L'Express magazine. Good morning, gentlemen. What will happen, assuming that a consensus does not emerge by the 16th of September? In that case, what will be the institutional value and legitimacy of an elected official whose prerogatives will not have been codified beforehand? The document that was detailed today has not been formally signed by the protagonists. Why hasn't it been signed? May I answer under the control of my partners, who will complement or correct what I have to say? I'm going to start with your second question. There hasn't been a formal signing for two reasons. First of all, the parties to this agreement wished to share the statement with those who have elected them and to have it officially approved by the people who have sent them here. Prior to a signing, they wished to consult various people. Another reason is that here you have presidents of institutions that do not mutually recognize each other. So you can't sign anything in those circumstances. Before today's meeting, the parties denied the reality, the existence of the other parties. That is the whole significance or meaning of this meeting. So we have found a formula based on common sense, which consists, instead of trying to come up with a statement that cannot be signed by anybody, the first purpose of the meeting was to get people to meet each other and to make a formal commitment, and they have all made a formal commitment to the timetable. Regarding the date of the 16th of September and the legitimacy of he or she who will be elected on December the 12th, the Constitution defines who will be elected. It's false to say that if a new Constitution didn't exist, there would be a vacuum. There is a reference, there is an existing Constitution. And secondly, we had to put an end to paralysis. Everybody agreed that we had to organize elections, and there were some disagreement. Do we need to change the Constitution or simply clarify the existing Constitution? If we hadn't set a deadline, we would have created a situation where collectively we could block each other and to make the elections impossible. So by setting the deadline of the 16th of September, as clearly said in the statement, there are two options. Either we take the draft constitution which has been drawn up, which exists, and which has to be voted on by the National Assembly and then submitted to the Libyan people. Either we follow this legislative and referendum process. This is an option defended by some of the parties, and this provides a legal basis for the elections, and we move on. It's a possible option. It's a complex option. I myself have shared that this constitutional reform would take time. France is also changing its constitution, less ambitious amendment than the Libyans are envisaging, but I don't think I will be able to finalize it by the 16th of September. Indeed, it would not be reasonable to expect that. So we mustn't be blocked by thinking that there's only one option. Everybody agreed that if it was not the Constitution, on the basis of the constitutional statement or declaration, we commit ourselves to finding the legal basis to pass an electoral law to organize the elections. It was particularly important to get the commitment of President Saleh, given his responsibility at the head of the National Assembly, could have blocked this process, and he made the commitment. So either we'll have a constitution adopted by the National Assembly and by the people, or we will have an electoral law voted by the Assembly on the basis of the Constitution. But there will be a legal document recognized by all the parties who have all accepted this transparent procedure, which will make it possible to organize serene elections in December and to ensure the legitimacy of whoever is elected in December. You both agree with what I've said?
Madame, puis Monsieur.
Mr. President, what guarantees, I'm asking all three of you, what guarantees exist that the inter-Arab quarrels will not continue to have an adverse effect on Libya and hinder this agreement? The circumstances, the security situation in Libya is such that many militias are not represented here today and could hinder the implementation of this agreement. Have you any fears regarding the fact that these militias could jeopardize the implementation of this agreement? Of course, there are many challenges that we have to face for these elections: the security situation, foreign intervention. And patriotic commitments. So we're going to work hand in hand in order, in the time period until the elections, we're going to create a climate that will be conducive to elections. Nobody is saying that it will be an easy route, an easy itinerary. Last month, a terrorist attack was implemented against the Election Commission, and the democratic process will have to face other challenges. But we believe the national forces of Libya will work hard to achieve the goals we have set ourselves. You're right. A lot of efforts have been made from outside Libya to destabilize Libya, exploiting the militias that exist in Libya. First of all, I note that great progress has been made in some areas. Collectively, we have committed, last year in Abidjan, we committed to reducing the role of traffickers and to deal also with the scandal which several colleagues, human trafficking in Libya. The 9-point statement published in Abidjan had a great effect. The African Union mobilized itself with the help of the United Nations, under the aegis of the United Nations, with funding by several African countries and by the European Union, and this made it possible for dozens of thousands of African citizens to return to their countries of origin. At the same time, in line with the commitments made in August 2017 with several African countries and European states, we increased the fight, we intensified the fight against human traffickers. This human trafficking was undermining Libya and was a great cause for concern, and explained many of the interferences. We have dismantled several networks of human smugglers, so a lot of work has been done in recent months. A lot of work has been done to secure the country of Libya. There are two major difficulties remain. We mustn't be naive. First of all, there is a terrorist risk. The terrorist exists. There is insecurity. It has affected your country. It has affected our country as well, particularly a recent attack in the building of the Election Commission and the process which the UN representative is supervising is very difficult, and that's why we have come together. Will there be no more terrorist actions, no more action by the militias? It's impossible to say that we will eradicate the militias overnight, but the collective mobilization, the joint work between the Libyan parties and the other parties just in support of this text will allow us to put an end to misunderstandings and to reduce the noxious activity of certain militias who exploited human trafficking to great effect. From a political point of view, political interference, this mobilization will stop this political interference. Why? What has happened in recent months, as these are very responsible and very polite people, they will never say so officially, but President Sarraj and other leaders who were here today, and Special Representative Salamé, when they said something after a discussion, they always had a representative from another country who said, "You have misunderstood that. This is how we're going to do things." And so this created deep uncertainty. Not that the Libyans need the international community to decide what to do, but they wasted a lot of time by bringing everybody together, by allowing everybody to express their views, and by supporting a specific process regarding the objectives, political, military, economic, and administrative. By focusing on deadlines and drawing up a protocol, nobody can say, I don't agree, and this is how we're going to do things. They were here, they were all in the photo just now. I asked them if they disagreed with the marriage of the four parties, and nobody said no. So now they can't tomorrow say you have misunderstood, it's not on the 16th of September, and so on. No, all that is finished. All the countries concerned, all the countries that have a stake in the situation, who have a role to play, who have links with Libya, were present. Not one was missing. So I think that this is a good remedy to all the interferences that we have created collectively in the past. In addition to what President Macron has just said regarding migration, an issue which has been discussed in many national and international bodies, migration is a major concern for Libyans, and we have discussed a number of solutions. We have come up with a number of solutions to reduce the burden of the suffering of these migrants. How can we provide them with food, shelter? How can we guarantee that their rights are not jeopardized? And how can we guarantee their return to their countries of origin? A number of refugees and a number of migrants have been repatriated to their countries of origin, but the problem is that the number of such migrants today in Libya, there are hundreds of thousands of them. We need a colossal effort on the part of Africa, Europe, and the international community to bring an answer to this problem, which poses a serious challenge to the region, to Libya. Clandestine migration, unlawful migration with drug trafficking and other crimes and organized crime. We are all obliged to work together with the Libyan state and the Libyan authorities to put an end to this situation. I've just heard what you've said. Have you obtained any reassurances from regional authorities regarding non-intervention in Libyan affairs? In the past, many heads of state and government and ministers have declared that they will not intervene in Libya in vain. Mr. Sarraj, you mentioned in your statement earlier that you want the military authority to be subject to the civilian authority. Does everybody agree with this? Will the new constitution or the new electoral law, will it allow the military to stand for the presidential elections? Mr. Salamé, aren't you worried that this new constitution, the rather vague terms of this constitution, may jeopardize the process that you are initiating today? Yes, I did mention a key point. The military institution, the military must be under the authority of a civilian authority. We're not reinventing the wheel. This is what happens all over the world. The existence of two parallel sources of power, military and civilian, can only jeopardize the success of the state. So who can stand for elections? Those who will be allowed to stand for election will be set, the criteria will be set by the electoral law. During the meeting we had this morning, we thought of all the work that has been done, but I was also thinking of the immense amount of work that remains to be done. By the 16th of September, we have to decide on the constitutional basis on which the elections will be held. Mr. Sarraj mentioned three options: either a referendum on the text adopted in 2010, 2017, in July 2017, which poses problems, but which is a comprehensive project, or a revision of the Constitutional Declaration of 2011, or we extract a constitutional project which the Constitutional Commission has just submitted, and we extract the parts of the Constitution that concern the future pending the referendum. So we must decide between one of those three options, which is the one that behind which there is the greatest consensus. It is not easy to. It's not easier to achieve unanimity in Libya than in France or any other country. You cannot have unanimity. But the important thing is to allow the predominant opinion to emerge. And to do so, we must be creative in the way we present the various options. But I would like to say this. What facilitates or makes a solution more difficult is the motivation. If the true motivation, the real Libyan motivation, not your motivation, my motivation, if the Libyans want to get out of the current situation in which they are, we will find a solution. If the motivation isn't there, there will always be legal arguments to say that we won't do this or we won't do that. I believe this motivation exists. I see it through many signs. There are many signs of this. First of all, opinion polls regarding the elections. Since I have arrived, over the last 9 months, those who support the elections has gone up from 57% to 70% to over 80% last week. And another figure, the number of Libyans who have registered on the electoral rolls. When we started registering voters last year with the support of the National Electoral Commission, which is an independent and professional body, when they started registering voters, I remember very well a major Libyan leader said, if you manage to register 500 or 600 people a day, it's not bad. But I remember on the 26th of December last year, 32,000 Libyans registered as voters. So in other words, the number of Libyans registered on the electoral roll has gone up from 31% to 54% within a few months. And I think this is very revealing. It reveals that we have doubled the number of people who have registered on the electoral rolls. So if we are looking for a credible referendum and credible elections, we now know that the turnout will be much higher than in the previous elections, which were held in 2014. And the low turnout, of course, jeopardize the legitimacy of those elections. So if this motivation exists, if, Mr. President, let me sum it up in one phrase. I have never seen such a convergence of views between the will of the Libyan people and the will of the international community. In both cases, there has been a call for elections, a return to allowing the people to decide who is legitimate and who is not legitimate on the Libyan political stage. And it would be a pity if this window of opportunity based on a convergence of views between the international community and the Libyan people, if this window of opportunity is not taken, it would be a crime. It would be a crime. Regarding international guarantees, all the countries represented committed to support the declaration. They have all committed to intervening, to supporting what is spelt out in the statement, in the declaration. And this is a first, because we had never had such a clear commitment. Countries used to say, we must organize elections. Some said, no, we can't organize elections before changing the constitution. And other parties wanted to maintain the status quo. Others wanted to go forward very quickly. So the convergence of views in Libya helped the international community also to see a convergence of views, and everybody is committed to this joint declaration. So the three questions you have asked reflect the debate we've had. The support, the relationship between the military and the civilians. President Sarraj said very clearly where the tensions were. So I think there is now a unanimous agreement between the four leaders. At the end of the process, the military power will be subject to the legitimate civilian power elected by Parliament. So it is the electoral process which will put the sovereign Libyan people at the center of all concerns. And the special representative has perfectly described the technical options. Everybody agrees we must hold the elections by December the 10th, and we must find the most effective and the most honest way forward. And legitimately, the lack of clarity will gradually go. We couldn't decide on everything today. A great step forward has been taken, and in the next few weeks and months we will have a legal and political debate. Everybody has accepted to make his best efforts to adopt a new constitution. Everybody has committed to laying the foundations legally credible to organize elections in December, and nobody questioned the third option presented by the special representative, the possibility, on the basis of the constitutional declaration, to take certain elements to create an electoral law. Failing the adoption of a new constitution, an electoral law will be passed, and everybody has committed to this. So we have a timetable, we have a procedure, and the commitment of the parties. In the first place, the commitment of the legislators to pass the law within the required time limit to go ahead. So we have ended a paralysis, a collective blockage nourished by divisions, intra-Libyan divisions and international divisions. It's a moment of reconciliation for the benefit of effectiveness, efficiency, and the Libyan people. One last question now.
The French president there, Emmanuel Macron, addressing reporters after hosting talks between Libya's rival leaders. By Emmanuel Macron's side, the Prime Minister, Fayez al-Sarraj. He is the head of the internationally recognized government in the capital, Tripoli, and also with him the UN Special Representative, Hassan Salameh. Now,